Hello, my dear companions. Welcome to Dagon or Dagon. Yeah, I think it's Dagon. This is a interesting game. It's free on Steam, by the way, and it has gotten such good reviews. And it's a short H.P. Lovecraft game, and it's so interesting because this is a free game. It's more of a retelling of kind of the original novel that H.P. Lovecraft wrote, and the first novel that actually introduced us to Cthulhu and the Cthulhu mythos, if you say so. And yeah, I like to delve down into these kind of H.P. Lovecraft horror games sometimes, because they are more psychological and not just jump scares. And yeah, there are also 2 DLCs. And one is more of a like art style and some reading, some like text and such you can buy. And the little glass bottle is an upcoming DLC. But yeah, let's jump right into it. Dagon is a faithful interactive. Here we got it. Faithful interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work. Focus on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here. And movement is limited to progressing through locations along with the plot. So it's, I don't like to say walking simulator, but it actually seems really faithful to the novel that introduced us to Cthulhu. So if you are interested in Lovecraft stuff, I think you'll love this. Boom.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
What? Why? During the game you will encounter interactive elements. Some of them will allow you to continue your journey, others will lead into interesting facts. Okay. Some of the trivia is hidden in order to find these secrets. You focus your eyes and look for the elder sign. Okay. I need to look around like this. That is progressive story. Do I have anything else? Can't really move. Oh, look at that. Lovecraft's left. Oh, this is cool. As to letters, my case is peculiar. I write such things exactly as easily, as rapidly as I would utter the same topics in conversation. You can read this by yourself, by the way. I will just read through a bit. So these are actually letters that H.P. Lovecraft wrote. Throughout his life, Lovecraft penned around 100,000 letters to his friends and fans. What? But his tendency to endless correspondence was a relatively late growth. In youth, I scarcely did any letter writing. Thanking anybody for a present was so much of an ordeal that I would rather have written 250-line pastoral or 20-page treatise on the rings of Saturn. Would often skip meals to afford postage. Collections of his correspondence have been published in various books, and selected letters can be found online. Some readers consider them his most important. So interesting. I mean, the whole universe of Lovecraft. I mean, wow, yeah, he has really affected our way of seeing the supernatural and horror elements.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
No, that's a bad idea.
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate.
Anything special?
When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
Okay. Morphine entered into use of 19th century and was routinely administered to treat. I mean, it was such a revolution when you could start using morphine to kill the pain for so many people. And that time was when Dagon was published. Morphine abuse, known as soldier's disease, yes, already posed a big problem in it. Okay, yeah. So one of his novels was called Dagon. Okay.
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Okay. Lovecraft and the Great War. So much info about Lovecraft. It was written around a month. Dagon was written about a month after the United States entered World War I. Okay. Was actively interested in its course. Okay, he composed many poems in which he gave encouragement to soldiers and commented on the events unfolding in Europe. Okay, so he was kind of interested in the World War I. He tried to enlist in the army, which he mentioned in one of the letters. Okay. You can just pause the video when you read the whole letters. But even though he passed the physical exam, his mother prevented him from going. Oh. Well, I guess that was good. Maybe he would have died in the war and not been able to create all these wonderful works.
The Great War was then at its very beginning.
Look at
and
this.
The ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
This is completely free. It's such a good work.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
The HUNS. The HUNS were Central Asian nomads and blah blah blah. Okay, cool. The refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the law, a customs of war adopted during the first Hague Convention in 1899. Okay. This game actually will teach you a lot of things. I love it.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Oh, that's perfect. Do we have there something? Do I have anything else? Don't think so.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings.
So this is the story of Dagon, or a prisoner or soldier that was imprisoned by the enemies and managed to escape out in the open sea.
Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
That's a lovely voice, actually. It's a perfect voice for narration. I have to look for other stuff. What is that sound? Anything else? Okay.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
I mean, this game looks so good. I keep hearing things. Are those seals or dolphins? I don't know.
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
Such a beautiful way of... I love the way he writes, Lovecraft.
change happened whilst I slept.
The change? Here we go.
Its details I shall never know. For my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
Oh boy, here we go. That is an octopus.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see.
What the fuck?
And in which my boat lay grounded some distance away.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished.
Yeah, me too. I would be horrified if I woke up to this.
For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core.
Oh my god.
The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain.
I mean...
Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity.
I love it. I hope you have headphones, because this is such a good whale. I would love to hear, H.P. Lovecraft's old novels, to listen to them like audiobooks. That would be amazing.
There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the
so
landscape
dark.
oppressed me with a nauseating fear.
So dark.
The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
The origins of Dagon. Dagon seems to be inspired by Fishhead, a short novel by... Oh, okay. So he was kind of... Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. It was inspired by an actually even older novel. Between the hybrid idiot and the strange fish of an isolated lake, supernatural horror, and of course a dream about a strange island emerging from an ocean and crawling in the ooze that covered its surface. Lovecraft's interest in the topic stemmed from his aversion to fish and sea smell. In his own words, I have hated fish and feared the sea and everything connected with it since I was 2 years old. But I cannot recall what earlier experience gave me such a profound and lasting aversion to the sea and seafood. What? I didn't know that. He actually was really horrified and afraid of the ocean and fish. That is interesting. It's interesting because many of his stories, especially the Cthulhu stories, are about the sea, the deep oceans and such. That's cool. Yeah, the sound.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Exactly, this is so disturbing. I'm trying to find news, like interesting facts. And let's continue.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness, and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time.
Okay, nice, good. What the heck is that? I mean...
That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
Okay.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease.
Okay, good.
The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
What I love about these stories are... We have played several games that have been inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. Several of them on the channel, and all are, you know, it's all about madness, kind of going insane and being in this kind of... I don't know, it's hard to describe. I just love this kind of horror. Much more than just cheap jump scares. Anything here? Let's go on. This is good.
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
What the hell is that? I don't like these guys. This is getting insane. What the heck is that whole... Is that a blue whale? Not the blue whale, maybe. I don't know. Let's get out of here.
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
Well... The horrors of this ocean, the creator of the Cthulhu mythos and the fictional underwater city, R'lyeh, was convinced that life could not exist at the bottom of the ocean because the water pressure would make it uninhabitable. Today we know that, yeah, we know that many creatures can actually live down there. Even during this, as I say, hellishly crushing pressures. And always darkness. It's amazing to see that we can actually, when there are actually fish, creatures down there who live in complete darkness their whole life, so cold and so that kind of pressure. And that is what I think is so creepy about the oceans in a way. I think it fits so well with horror and ocean, because we know so little about the oceans. We know so little. There are such big areas of the oceans, especially the deep ones. We have no idea what lives down there. And we haven't been at the seafloor in many of the parts of the world. So you never know. And that is so creepy.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance.
There is a bloody mountain.
An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night. But ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain,
Okay.
I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more.
So creepy. I love this.
Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. And in the glow of the moon, I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day.
Yeah.
Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy.
Exactly. Should have traveled during the night.
Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
Crest of the eminence. Oh. The loner. Contrary to popular opinion, Lovecraft was not an ever-frowning, eccentric, grumpy loner. He considered himself to be a person who appreciated humor. I had no idea. Moreover, he would often meet with friends in his apartment or at various cafes in Brooklyn and Manhattan. At times his social life was so intensive, his work would suffer for months. There was a point where he had to put an end to daily meetings, and hiding at home and reading with the main room light turned off, pretending he wasn't there whenever a friend knocked on the door. He also another method of deterring his guests, which involved greeting them in a bathrobe. Okay, so he tried to spend more alone time.
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon.
Oh?
Whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine.
Okay, I can't... Okay.
I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night.
Is that a pit?
Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
Look at that, so creepy.
Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent.
Why are we going... We're not going to descend there, come on.
Just after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
I don't know, man. It's a bad idea.
Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath.
It's so dark.
Gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me.
What the heck is that? It's like an obelisk.
An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
Anything else? What is that?
It was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature.
No, of course not. That's not natural.
A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
Anything else to look at?
For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith.
Also, yeah, not obelisk, monolith. I mean monolith.
Whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures.
Yeah, and that's creepy.
Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
Nothing else we can click on.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed
What is
in the
that?
chasm.
There are drawings there. There are the drawings there.
And revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures.
Let's imagine finding something like this.
The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain.
Yeah, that's true.
It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Dagon contains many themes and storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as telling a story throughout carvings. Yes. Damn it, I need to read these old stories. I need to read more Lovecraft. I really do. Tell me in the comments down below if you have read any of his novels and such. Journals and character notes, yes. Island emerging from the ocean, yeah. The Call of Cthulhu. Yes, this is, yeah, I love it. Fictional beings and deities. It's also considered the origin of the popular Cthulhu mythos. So this is Dagon is kind of the origin story.
Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto.
You see, and that is beneath the surface. We can find this monolith, and we have the different fish people.
Or paying homage at some monolithic shrine, which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer.
Look at that.
They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips.
Yeah.
Glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
Oh. So he killed the whale, and he was as big as the whale.
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
I don't know, I would be so creeped out if I found this.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it.
What? In the water.
With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares.
Oh Jesus, that scared me so bad. That is one of the sea creatures.
About which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little.
Oh God. Our
I
vision.
believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing.
He's going crazy. He's going nuts.
I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods.
So one of the things about Cthulhu and such is that if you try to understand Cthulhu and try to understand the mythos, it kind of will drive you mad because it will be too much for your mind to handle. It will be too much for your
When I came out of the shadows,
mind to handle.
I was in a San Francisco hospital.
Oh, okay. So you can, okay.
Brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean.
So he was in the ocean. So he never was at the island.
In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing.
Exactly.
Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
See there. Can I click this? In defense of Dagon. In 1921 released a series of 3 essays. The defense reopens, defense remains open, final words. A collection titled In Defense of Dagon, in which he rebuked a series of criticism directed at his work. I paint what I dream and I will let the public settle the rest. Yeah, because many people were kind of upset maybe about what he wrote and the things he wrote. But he kind of defended it and said, I can write whatever I want, and fix so hard as a war, no matter how extreme and unprecedented hard. Yes, in the essay, Lovecraft touches upon the topics of atheism, materialism, and the quest for truth and the love of science. Yeah, I can understand why his work might be criticized, because many people during this age, I think they thought his takes were too extreme in a way, because people hadn't really written anything like this before. A journalist was a prominent figure in the world of amateur journalism. He started publishing his own journal called The Conservative. Oh, I didn't know that. Included political and social commentary, poetry and short stories. I had no idea he was a journalist. You can pause the video if you want to read it all.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Oh. So Dagon, there is an old tale about an old fish god. Dagon was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as the ancient god of fertility and crops. Oh, I had no idea. I thought Dagon was totally made up by Lovecraft. In H.P. Lovecraft's work, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that... Yeah, that's the one we saw before. He worshipped by a secret cult called Esoteric Order of Dagon. This is good.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
Conventions, yeah, maybe he could understand, and he wanted to talk about the Dagon, the fish god and such, but to tell him more about, you know, what we saw and the monolith and such, he wouldn't believe it. He wouldn't believe that. The marketeer attempted to find a job in 1925 with influenced advice he received from friends. Among others, he started freelancing for a marketing magazine. Okay, cool. Cool. The Cthulhu mythos. August Derleth was an American writer and anthologist. He also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works throughout his company Arkham House. I had no idea. Although he greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's work after his death, he is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of the most questionable decision involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted with Lovecraft's view of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's work are often misunderstood and misinterpreted. That is cool, Tom. So Lovecraft never wanted his work to be, you know, divided into good and evil. I thought he wanted to see everything like just a, you know, middle area. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating a mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by DERLETH after the author left the moral. Wow, so Cthulhu mythos, the whole... DERLETH wanted to make money. It kind of feels like he wanted to make money, and he tried to popularize the Lovecraft works much more than what Lovecraft really wanted. He tried to make a universe. He tried to make a like a Marvel universe, you say so, but with Lovecraft's works. So the Cthulhu mythos, the Cthulhu universe. That is cool. That is interesting. This actually is really interesting. What am I looking at? Okay. Scientist. But the term scientist became more accepted only after World War II, and the man of science started fading into obscurity as a... Oh! So before that they actually used man of science. So the word scientist is not that old. That is interesting. That is interesting.
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing.
The thing? What thing?
I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave.
Oh.
So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Oh. Lovecraft tobacco. He hated tobacco. Well, that is cool. Also had a very strong opinion about alcohol. So matter of drinking, I have never tasted intoxicated and never intend to. So he hated alcohol. He hated tobacco. Having a strong disgust at anything which blunts or coarsens the delicate. So he thought the human mind was such a delicate, beautiful thing, and he couldn't understand why people would try to, you know, blur it or damage it with alcohol and tobacco. That's interesting. That is cool.
Often I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm. a mere freak of fever, as I lay sun-stricken
Exactly.
and raving in the open boat
We don't
after
know.
my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply.
Oh.
I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed.
Exactly, that is so creepy, you don't know. There might be stuff down there we haven't seen before.
Worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite.
You saw that?
I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
Oh my god. Oh my god, look at that. So he kinda wanted just a day to see when these creatures actually stood up and were not just a legend or dream, it was true. And yeah, maybe one day we will see this. Maybe one day we'll wake up and boom. Because we don't know. We don't know what's down there actually. There are so many places down there in the ocean we haven't explored. And of course it could be bigger creatures down there, of course. I mean, why not? Why not?
The end is near.
What's happening?
I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering
Look at
against
that!
it.
Anything else we can do?
It shall not find me.
So he thinks Cthulhu and the fish people. Alright. Please no jump scare.
God, that hand!
That was a big hand.
The window! The window!
So he committed suicide. Oh my god, that's the end of the story. Such a good story. I need to read some Lovecraft work. This was a great introduction to the Dagon novel. I loved that. I loved that. Yeah, check out the DLCs and check out the game. Maybe I missed things. And tell me in the comments down below, what do you think about Lovecraft? Are you a big fan of the Lovecraft universe? And have you read any of his works? And I will have a link to the other game series that we've made on the channel with Lovecraft stuff. Hope you enjoyed. Never ever forget to stay awesome, and I'll see you soon. Toodeloo.
About which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds.